Her granddaughter blasted her with a garden hose mid-party, mid-laugh like she was the punchline. Dot Langston, widow and legal property owner, didn't flinch. Her daughter-in-law raised a wine glass. Her son said nothing. By the next week, their lawn died, their faucets ran dry, and the HOA came knocking. They thought she was just the old woman in the casita. But the water ran through her signature, and now it didn't run at all. Before we begin, may I ask, where in this big, beautiful world are you listening from? It's always a quiet honor to know who's sharing this space. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. The hose coiled like a harmless toy in Sophie's manicured hands, but what it unleashed wasn't water. It was a line crossed, clean and cold. Dot had been sitting quietly at the edge of the Langstons' backyard cookout, under the shade of a faded umbrella, her paper plate balanced neatly on her lap, a chicken skewer half-eaten, potato salad untouched, her sun hat tilted slightly against the glare. The laughter from the patio buzzed behind her like a distant swarm, filtered, curated, distant. Then Sophie picked up the hose. "Can I? Just real quick," she squealed, already pointing it toward the sky like it was a game. Lori waved a hand, distracted by her phone. "Sure, sweetie, just don't soak the guests." That gave Sophie a target, and she didn't hesitate. The first blast hit Dot in the knees. She jerked upright, startled, her plate clattering to the flagstone. Water soaked into her skirt instantly, cold and sharp, the kind that bit even through fabric. The hose whipped again, this time upward, catching her square in the chest, then her shoulder, and finally, the side of her face. She tried to rise, but her sandal caught on the lip of the patio step, slick now with runoff. Her hip hit the ground with a sickening thud. "Oh my God, Grandma!" Sophie giggled, breathless with performance. "You needed it." The hose swung down and off, just as fast, water still dripping from its metal nozzle. Sophie turned back toward the crowd gathered by the grill, triumphant. A few neighbors clapped in confusion, unsure if it had been a skit or just teenage chaos. Evan didn't move. Lori laughed lightly, then said, "Oh, she's just playing, Mom. It's hot you've been sitting all afternoon. It's harmless." Dot didn't answer. She was already pushing herself off the pavement slowly, breath steady, muscles tight. Her hip ached, not sharp pain, but deep, the kind that would bloom into a purple bruise by morning. Her sundress clung to her skin, fabric soaked through. One of her earrings had come loose and lay in the puddle beside her foot. A smear of potato salad trailed down the patio grout. She looked up. Cameras were out. Sophie's friends had phones in hand. One was already swiping at their screen, maybe to post, maybe to delete. A quiet voice broke through the laughter. "That wasn't right." Dot turned. Miss Kent stood at the edge of the pergola, arms folded. HOA name tag clipped to her pressed blouse, lips drawn tight. But she didn't intervene. She didn't reprimand. Just watched, evaluated, as always. Dot straightened her spine, plucked her earring from the ground, and adjusted her sun hat with one soaked hand. She walked past the patio table, ignoring the stack of solo cups, the cooler of melted ice, the citronella candles flickering in the corners like useless guards. No one stopped her. Not Lori, not Evan. The hose lay half-coiled on the grass, hissing a slow leak. And beyond it, the garden sprinklers misted in soft, rhythmic arcs across Lori's over-landscaped lawn, imported lavender, and lush hydrangeas thriving in defiance of the regional drought. Dot paused by the border of the lawn, her feet squishing in her soaked sandals. She looked at the garden, the water, the perfect rose of color, the faint smell of synthetic fertilizer clinging to the air. Then she looked back at the hose. She said nothing. She simply wiped her face with her sleeve, straightened her dress as best she could, and walked toward the path leading back to her casita, the smaller home she hadn't been invited to move into, but had paid for nonetheless. Behind her, the laughter faded into idle chatter. Someone opened a seltzer. Music started again, and the sprinklers kept ticking in perfect arcs, watering roots no one had earned. Dot's wet dress clung to her legs as she stepped into the quiet of her casita, the hum of the ceiling fan greeting her like a held breath. She closed the door behind her, the soft click sounding more final than it should have. She didn't go straight to the bathroom to change. She didn't towel off the water still dripping down her arms. Instead, She walked one slow step after another to the wooden cabinet beneath the framed photo of her and Harold from 1982. He was holding a shovel, grinning wide at the start of the home they'd built together. Evan had been a toddler then, smiling crooked with jam on his chin. She opened the cabinet. Inside, a metal file box, labeled in her handwriting, Property Records 2005, 2020. She sat at her kitchen table, water spotting the floor beneath her, and began to pull out the folders one by one. Some pages smelled like old ink. Others were crisp with the stiffness of being read but never touched. There it was. Langston Property Transfer, Temporary Protective Trust, Primary Residence Clause, dated 6 months after Harold's funeral. The legal arrangement had been simple at the time. Transfer the title of the main house into Evan's name for asset shielding during the estate transition. Just paperwork. Just precaution. But below that, water easement and irrigation rights, retained by Dorothy A. Langston. Utility control addendum, Casita Power, plumbing, and secondary lines. Owner, Dorothy A. Langston. She exhaled, slowly. They'd never asked about the rest of it. Just moved in, planted trees, programmed sprinklers, and started swimming in what they never owned. Dot opened her laptop, fingers still damp, and logged into the utility dashboard. Water usage chart. Last month, plus 62%. Irrigation spikes daily from 6 o'clock, 7:30 a.m. 3-zone system, flowing directly into Lori's designer landscape project, including the absurd new bed of hybrid blue hydrangeas, the ones that shouldn't have survived a drought-prone zip code. She clicked into the HOA portal, entered her access code, and pulled up the landscaping bylaws. Section 9.2, Lawn Maintenance During Regional Shortage. All homes must comply with the state-mandated watering schedule. No automated irrigation systems during drought restrictions. Violation fines started at $100, then $250, then $500. She poured herself a glass of water, cold, clean, filtered through her casita's independent line, and picked up her cell. It rang 3 times. "Dot?" Ria's voice came through, dry and clipped as always. "I was just about to pour a drink. You'll want to sit down first," Dot said. "Quick question." "I'm already sitting. What are we digging into?" "Water rights. Oh, clauses. And title transfers wrapped in a son's ego." She paused. "What do I still own that they've forgotten?" There was a beat of silence, then a sound, Ria reaching for a drawer, likely her own legal files, out of habit. "Everything that actually matters," she said. Dot looked toward the window. The sun had started to set, casting golden slants across her garden. Low rosemary bushes, native succulents, her citrus tree in the back that needed almost nothing and yet gave her everything. The hose, the laughter, the bruise on her hip, they were already fading behind her. But the water? That was just beginning. At 6:12 a.m., the mist began. Dot sat at her window, black coffee in hand, watching Lori's lawn flicker with dewy arcs of forbidden luxury. The sprinkler heads popped up with an obedient hiss, releasing thin streams across the hydrangeas, the imported sod, and the lemon tree they'd planted too shallow, already beginning to brown at the roots. Water ran down the slope of the lawn and pooled along the edge of the decorative stone border, soaking the sidewalk in glistening defiance of California's strictest drought protocols. The HOA had sent reminders. The city had issued guidelines. Lori had ignored them. Dot picked up her phone and took 3 photos, one close-up, one wide, one time-stamped with her kitchen clock in the background. That same afternoon, Sophie posted a new carousel on Instagram, this time from the backyard. It showed her sprawled across a pink inflatable flamingo, sunglasses on, phone in hand, legs dipped lazily into a fully inflated above-ground pool. The caption, "Just vibing gal. Number backyard luxury. Number stay hydrated." Dot blinked. She'd forgotten about the pool, a tacky vinyl eyesore they'd bought, just to keep Sophie cool, Evan had said last July, right after the governor had restricted all non-essential outdoor water usage. Permits were required for any standing structures holding more than 100 gallons. Dot opened the HOA portal and pulled up Section 14.3. No private water features shall be installed or maintained during active drought advisory periods unless permitted and approved in writing. She didn't sign her name. But the anonymous complaint she submitted was detailed. GPS-tagged photos, date, time, violation codes, documentation of frequency. By the following Wednesday, Evan received a warning letter on thick white cardstock with the HOA crest at the top and Miss Kent's signature at the bottom. Dot watched from her porch as he read it on the driveway, his mouth curling with confusion. Lori leaned over his shoulder in her robe, still sipping her morning green juice. "What the hell is this?" she snapped. $250 fine for what? He handed it to her. Sprinklers, pool, noncompliance. Lori's eyes darted up toward the HOA sign planted at the end of the cul-de-sac. Someone reported us. Dot sat silently in her rocking chair, sipping sweet mint tea. Her hydrangeas native, low water, drought resilient, stood sturdy in her shaded side yard. "Who would report us?" Lori shouted, her voice echoing too loud for 8 a.m. Evan shrugged. "We haven't done anything wrong. Obviously someone thinks we have." Her eyes darted across the street. "That's Kent's house. Maybe she—" "It came anonymously," Evan muttered, shaking the envelope like it would answer him. Dot rose from her chair and stepped back inside. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She walked to her utility closet, opened the cabinet beneath the electrical panel, and pulled back the narrow door behind it. Inside was a simple switch, labeled years ago in Harold's handwriting. Irrigation main house. She ran her thumb along the edge. She could hear it outside, still the faint tick, tick of the automatic timer prepping for tomorrow. Dot took a slow breath and flipped the switch. It clicked into place with a soft, final thunk. Outside, the timers would still click on, the heads would still rise, but nothing would come. They would check the mechanics, the timers, the sensors, but they'd never check the source, because they'd forgotten who owned it. By day 2, the grass had begun to change. It wasn't sudden, not dramatic, not yet. But the deep emerald sheen Lori had curated with high-end turf feed and Pinterest-approved hydration schedules had dulled to an uneven yellow-green. The tips curled in on themselves. The flower beds drooped like wilted pride. From her porch, Dot stirred her iced tea with a metal spoon and watched it happen. Slow, precise decay. Across the yard, Lori stood barefoot in a pair of pale pink linen pants, arms crossed, scanning the garden like it had betrayed her. Evan knelt beside one of the sprinkler heads, tapping buttons on the panel box. The digital screen blinked to life zone timers set, rain sensors bypassed, everything in proper sequence. But when he pressed start, nothing rose. The head stayed buried. The earth stayed dry. "Try zone 3, Lori barked. "I did. It's not the timer," Evan muttered. "Mechanically, it's fine." "Then why is nothing happening?" He shook his head, wiping sweat off his temple. "I don't know. Water pressure? Valve issue?" Lori squinted across the yard. Her gaze lingered, briefly, on Dot seated as always in her rocking chair, not gloating, not interfering, just there. Dot offered a slow sip of her tea in reply. The next morning, a white envelope fluttered from the mailbox like an omen. Homeowners Association, second warning, violation. Unauthorized irrigation schedule, continued usage during drought advisory period. Non-compliance pending fine escalation. Evan read it aloud in the kitchen. Lori crumpled it in her fist. "What the hell does this mean? We're not even watering." Miss Kent arrived on foot just after noon, clipboard in hand, her wide-brimmed hat casting deep shadows across her sharp eyes. She didn't knock. She didn't smile. Dot saw her approach and rose to meet her halfway, the summer sun already high enough to sting. "Afternoon, Miss Langston," Kent said, tone as clipped as the hedges she once fined someone for trimming without permission. "Good to see you, Madeline. I won't take long. I'm making rounds. Your son's property is now on day 3 of citation warnings. If no correction is made, the fines will double." "They're aware," Dot said. "They believe it's a malfunction," Kent added, pausing. "But there's no mechanical reason water wouldn't be flowing." Dot tilted her head, one brow lifting. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "the system's not as solid as they think." Miss Kent didn't smile, but the corner of her mouth shifted, almost imperceptibly. Behind them, Lori stepped outside and hovered near the patio, watching them like a cat at the edge of a window. She didn't call out. Kent gave a polite nod and turned back toward the sidewalk. Fines continue every 48 hours until proof of compliance or an appeal. Dot waited until she'd rounded the block before retreating into her casita. She locked the door behind her not because she felt unsafe, but because what she was about to do deserved quiet. She pulled the HOA website back up, logged in under her owner credentials, and opened the Forms and Disputes tab. Request for Emergency Utility Access Reassessment Form 18B. She filled in the fields one by one. Lot 127A Daughter. Requesting Party Dorothy A. Langston. Grounds. Control of essential utilities under estate transfer was temporary. Water access diverted without consent. Current use in violation of HOA bylaws and city drought regulations. Attached. Deed copy. Water rights clause. Screenshots of Evan and Lori's irrigation system. Her own last 3 water bills, low, clean, and compliant. She clicked Submit and watched the screen flicker. Confirmation. Your reassessment request has been received. A board review will follow within 5 business days. Dot leaned back in her chair and folded her hands in her lap. From the window, she could see the Langstons' flower beds. They weren't just thirsty now. They were failing. The printer hummed like a final warning, low, steady, and merciless. Dot stood barefoot on the cool tile floor of her casita, watching the thick, cream-colored paper emerge inch by inch. Each page bore the seal of her late husband's estate attorney and her own initials in the lower right-hand margin, a habit she'd kept from her bookkeeping years. A signature was a moment. Initials were a reminder. This is still mine. 3 pages. 1 certified envelope. A notary witness. By noon, it was out of her hands and into the system. Addressed to Mr. Evan Langston and Mrs. Lori Langston. Subject: formal revocation of temporary title trust and utility easement. Dot returned home, poured herself a glass of chilled lemon water, and waited. It arrived 2 days later, delivered by a man in a tan USPS uniform who lingered awkwardly at the gate before dropping the envelope into the mailbox. Dot didn't watch them open it. She didn't have to. The shouting started within the hour. From her porch, she heard the screen door slap open. "What the hell is this?" Evan's voice was already elevated. Lori's followed, sharper, more rattled. "She's lost her mind. She can't just take it back." But she could. And she had. They stormed toward the casita, but Dot met them at the walkway, posture serene, blouse neatly tucked into her slacks, like she had been expecting guests. Evan held the letter in a crumpled hand. "This says the house title agreement is revoked, that I have 30 days to resolve or vacate, that you're removing the water rights." "I am," Dot replied, calm and crisp. "All of that is correct." "You can't undo a trust," he spat. "That's not how this works." Dot gestured toward the margin of the second page. "You should have read the notes, Evan. The clause allowed revocation in the event of gross misuse of property or violation of shared utilities." Lori crossed her arms. "We didn't misuse anything. We just... You inflated a drought, restricted water bill by 60%. You ignored 3 HOA citations, and your daughter assaulted me with a garden hose in front of a city official." Lori flinched. "She's a kid, Dorothy." "No," Dot said. "She's a mirror." Evan's face twisted. "This is vindictive." "No," she corrected again, eyes steady. "This is clarity. What you thought was yours was borrowed. You assumed the faucet would always run, the lawn would always green, the lights would always stay on because I stayed quiet." Behind them, the grass was already straw-colored. The hydrangeas were dead. Dot stepped aside and began walking toward the mailbox. "You have 30 days. After that, I revoke access completely. Utilities, land rights, title representation in the HOA, all of it." "We'll fight it," Lori snapped, voice high and brittle. Dot turned to face her. "You've had every opportunity to be a family. You chose convenience instead. I'm not asking for a fight. I'm offering a deadline." And then, as if on cue, a white SUV turned the corner. Miss Kent stepped out with a clipboard in one hand and a sealed envelope in the other. "Mrs. Langston," she called to Lori. "Mr. Langston, the board is suspending your voting and representation privileges in the HOA until the investigation concludes." "What investigation?" Lori asked, voice rising. "The one concerning misappropriated water access and unreported modifications to a protected easement," Kent replied matter-of-factly. handing over the envelope. Dot didn't smile. She didn't even blink. But inside her chest, something loosened. Not satisfaction, certainty. She walked back into her casita without another word and shut the door gently behind her. Behind that door, ownership had returned, and on the other side, her tenants stood on borrowed dirt. The whisper campaign began with wine. 2 days after the HOA suspension letter arrived, Dot caught the edge of a conversation drifting from across the fence. Clinking glasses, a dry chuckle, and Laurie's syrupy voice, barely pretending to whisper. It's been going on for months. She forgets what she said 5 minutes ago. Honestly, it's starting to scare Sophie. Dot paused mid-prune, her shears resting on the rosemary bush she'd been trimming. Her hands didn't tremble, her breath didn't hitch. She simply clicked the blades shut, carried the sprigs inside, and made tea. By sunset, a rumor had reached 3 households. By the weekend, 5. She let them speak. Then she responded. The HOA meeting took place in the community rec center, all gray folding chairs and over-polished laminate floors. Dot arrived early, dressed in slacks and a linen blouse, her gray hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck. A canvas tote held neatly tabbed folders, a portable binder, and a flash drive. When Miss Kent called her name, Dot stood. She spoke for less than 4 minutes. I am not here to defend my sanity, she began. I'm here to submit documentation of excessive water usage, unreported irrigation violations, and surveillance footage showing prohibited activity during drought-level restrictions. From her bag, she produced the usage logs, dated, highlighted, with a copy for each board member. Laurie, seated in the back with oversized sunglasses perched on her head, let out a disbelieving laugh. She's gone full tinfoil, Laurie muttered. Evan didn't even look up from his phone. But Miss Kent took the packet, flipped through the pages, and nodded. After the meeting, Kent approached Dot quietly in the hallway. I've suspected violations for months, she said, voice low. But no one ever submits hard data, just complaints. Then maybe it's time complaints became cases, Dot replied, her tone even. That evening, as dusk painted the neighborhood in lavender and rust, Sophie stood in the driveway filming herself phone angled high, voice sing-songy and smug. Day 6 of living with the water witch, she said to the camera. Grandma's probably building a moat to keep out common sense. Dot watched from her kitchen window, quietly pressing record on her own device, a small GoPro perched on the counter. Her face never appeared in frame. Just Sophie's voice, her words, and her laugh. Documentation. The next morning, Evan found an envelope wedged beneath their doormat, HOA letterhead visible. Name bolded at the top. Inside, a fine, 3 figures, for unauthorized water use. A note clipped to the bottom read, further violations will be escalated to city enforcement. The lawn, once an Instagram backdrop, was now a brittle patchwork of weeds and despair. The garden beds were dry, the roses dead. Laurie stormed outside, hose in hand, only to find the spigot locked with a cap. Dot installed it that morning, quietly, legally. Still, the accusations continued. She's unstable, Laurie told a group of neighbors during her morning dog walk. I think she's keeping notes on us. I heard she's filming. She is, Dot said softly, stepping out from the side path. Laurie jumped. I've submitted everything through the appropriate channels, Dot continued. But if you'd prefer I address it socially, we can do that too. Laurie flushed scarlet, said nothing. That night, Dot opened the shipping box that had arrived that morning. A sleek, weather-resistant security camera gleamed back at her. She mounted it beneath the awning of her casita, its lens angled perfectly at the main house's irrigation panel. The red light blinked once, then settled into a quiet, unwavering glow. The first time the sprinkler clicked on, it was 2:08 a.m. A faint hiss rolled over the sleeping neighborhood, soft as wind against canvas. From her window, Dot watched the spray fan out like silver threads under the moonlight moisture cascading over a parched lawn the city had already warned against watering. She didn't flinch, she simply checked the time and noted it in her log. The camera did the rest. By the 4th night, she had hours of footage, the forbidden watering cycles, the illegal flow direction hacked from her casita's shutoff. Even Laurie tiptoeing outside in silk pajamas to adjust the heads. Dot spliced the recordings together with timestamp overlays, quiet narration, and a steady hand. She used a simple video editor Rhea had shown her years ago. Nothing fancy, just clarity. She titled the file, Sprinklers and Silence, OA Violations, Lot 27. At the next HOA review window, Dot uploaded the footage via their digital portal. She attached her notes, water usage logs, and the city's restriction notice. By the time Miss Kent saw the email, the video had already auto-shared to the other board members. 3 days later, a new HOA notice arrived at the main house. This one was thick, 3 pages, itemized. Tiered penalties, first for illegal watering, then for bypassing the original shutoff, then for tampering with shared property lines. The fine now read $1,950. Evan lost his temper. Dot heard it from her porch. A crash. A door slammed. The sound of a ceramic planter meeting concrete. Inside their house, the tension had spread like mold. Lori snapped at Sophie during breakfast over a phone left unlocked, a half-charged iPad, a forgotten Wi-Fi password. But the truth was deeper. Sophie had posted again. A photo of her reflection in the pool with a snide caption, "Still dripping, even if Grandma can't." Dot didn't need to hear the rest. She saw the phone tossed across the patio later that evening. Lori's voice cut through the air like brittle glass. "You're going to get us in deeper. Do you understand that? This isn't cute anymore, Sophie." For once, Sophie didn't talk back. Dot sipped her tea beneath the soft glow of her patio light. Her yard stayed crisp and green, not from lushness but care. Native plants, gravel paths, rain barrel tucked neatly against the side. It had been sustainable from day one. The difference between show and substance. On Friday morning, Dot received a call from Miss Kent. Her voice held a strange note, a mix of satisfaction and concern. "Dorothy, someone from the county saw the footage. They're sending a rep." Dot blinked once. "Today?" "No, tomorrow. Be ready. They'll want to see your access points and system structure." "Good," Dot said calmly. "Let them come." That evening, she wiped down the spigot outside her casita, cleaned the box housing her shutoff valve, labeled her rainwater cache, and double-checked her tank's seal. When she stepped back, her yard looked like something from a conservation brochure. Theirs, in contrast, looked like scorched denial, a yellowing wasteland beneath fake garden arches and cracked ceramic gnomes. By morning, the sky was soft with overcast light, the kind that makes the air taste like metal and promises nothing. At precisely 9:17 a.m., a knock came at Dot's front door. Through the frosted pane, she saw a man in a navy polo shirt, clipboard under one arm, municipal badge clipped to his chest. He adjusted his glasses as she opened the door. "Miss Langston? I'm here about the water use discrepancies. I'll need to inspect all active irrigation access points on your property." Dot smiled. "Of course," she said. "Please come in through the side. I think you'll find the layout educational." The wrench turned with a metallic clank, and just like that, the house went dry. No gurgle. No warning, just silence. An unnatural hush that settled over the Langston property like a drawn breath. The inspector stood, wiping his hands with a white rag already smeared with red dust from the valve box buried beside the hedges. The reading on his portable flow meter blinked 0. "Ma'am," he said to Dot, "the auxiliary pipe was tapping directly into your system. Illegally. You were absorbing 60% of their draw." Dot nodded, lips tight. "I thought so." A screech tore through the morning. Lori stormed out the front door, barefoot, robe dragging, and phone clenched like a dagger. "You shut off my water?" she shrieked. The inspector turned calmly. "City order, ma'am." The line was diverted without permission. "Reconnection requires a new permit plus back billing and fines." Lori's mouth opened, but the words tangled. Her mascara was smudged, her hair matted. She looked less like a suburban hostess and more like someone unmasked in their own drama. "This is her doing," she pointed at Dot. "My mother-in-law's been trying to sabotage us." The inspector held up a hand. "The paperwork doesn't lie, Mrs. Langston. She owns the line. You don't." The hose, the pool, the midnight sprays, all of it had flowed through Dot's quiet generosity and now, through her equally quiet revenge. Evan came out next, palms up, voice rehearsed into calmness. "Mom, he said, approaching. This is getting out of hand. There are ways to fix this civilly. Dot didn't move from her porch chair. You fixed nothing for me, she said. Now I'm not fixing for you. The air buzzed with heat. A lizard darted across the path. The garden beds in Dot's yard remained green, but never lush designed to live within their means. Laurie snapped toward Evan. Do something! I'm trying, he hissed back, then turned again. Please, just, what do you want? Dot tilted her head. To not be asked that question by people who only ask it when the faucet stops. She stood slowly, joints crackling, then turned and went inside without slamming the door. She didn't have to. The silence left behind was louder than anything. That afternoon, Miss Kent arrived with a clipboard and a bright orange stake. She hammered it into the Langstons' front yard without ceremony. A laminated notice hung from the top. HOA Water Code violation. Level 3. Access. Revoked. Vertical bar fines accruing vertical bar under investigation. Evan rushed out again. You can't just advertise us like this. Miss Kent didn't flinch. Per code, section 14.6, public display of violation is required for ongoing offenses. You had ample warnings. Sophie peeked from behind the front window, face pale and phone in hand. But she didn't record this time. Dot watched from the casita window, her tea steeping dark and fragrant on the sill beside her. No part of her smiled. It wasn't joy, she felt it. Was equilibrium. A system rebalancing. That night, the neighborhood quieted early. No porch parties, no ambient Spotify playlists humming through open windows, just the chirp of crickets and the buzz of a single porch bulb left on too long. The casita was quiet almost, too quiet. Dot heard the faint click of the door latch and didn't flinch. She'd been sitting in her robe, legs tucked beneath her, sipping the last of her tea as the overhead light cast a soft amber glow across the kitchen. The soft shuffle of socks on tile reached her ears, slow and unsure. Then a breath, then stillness. She turned her head. Sophie stood in the doorway, her silhouette more fragile than familiar hair pulled into a lopsided bun, sleeves tugged over her hands, face bare and open in a way Dot hadn't seen since she was a child. You left the door unlocked, Sophie whispered. I know, Dot said. Sophie lingered at the edge of the room, arms crossed, not in anger but as if trying to hold herself together. Why are you doing this to us? The question wasn't sharp. It was raw-stripped of the performative sass and the dramatic pitch that usually framed her speech. For the first time, it sounded like Sophie wasn't rehearsing for a screen. Dot didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood slowly, walked over to the dining table, and pulled open a soft leather folder she'd left beside her tea. She laid out 3 things: a copy of the property deed, 2 red-marked water bills, and a printed photo of Sophie, standing triumphant with the garden hose arched over Dot's head. Water caught mid-blast, face mid-laugh. The caption beneath, posted by Sophie. Baptized the old bat. Number shed. Deserved it. Sophie stared at the picture. The color drained from her face. I gave, Dot said softly, until giving became expected, until it was no longer seen as a gift, but a platform for your mockery. Sophie blinked fast. It was a joke. No, Dot interrupted gently. A joke is mutual. That was humiliation. That was applause from your parents and silence from you. That was bruises on my arms and laughter in my ears. Sophie lowered herself slowly into the nearest chair. She didn't speak. Her lip quivered, and she bit it hard, trying to keep something in her pride, maybe. Dot didn't push. Dot slid the water bill across the table. This is what they ignored. And this, she tapped the deed, is what they used without asking, without care. Do you know what this paper means? Sophie nodded faintly. You own everything. Number. Dot leaned in, her voice almost a whisper. I protected everything. For decades. For your father. For your future. And I was repaid with a hose to the face while your mother poured Chardonnay and told guests to lighten up. Tears slipped down Sophie's cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. I didn't mean... Her voice cracked. I didn't know it would feel like this. Dot folded her hands on the table. Tell me one kind thing you've said to me this year. Sophie opened her mouth, closed it, searched the ceiling, the floor, Her fingers tugged at the sleeves of her hoodie, bunching the fabric tight over her knuckles. Dot waited. Finally, Sophie spoke, voice small and shattered. I liked your lemon bar once. Dot tilted her head. And when did you tell me that? I didn't, Sophie whispered. Dot stood and moved toward the sink. The kettle let out a tired hiss, steam curling like ribbon. She didn't scold, didn't comfort. She simply poured herself another cup of tea, letting the silence fill in the cracks Sophie's words couldn't. When Dot turned again, Sophie was already standing. I should go, the girl said, eyes still damp, posture different, now less guarded, more grounded. Dot gave a small nod. No permission, just acknowledgement. Sophie walked slowly toward the side door. She paused there for a moment, one hand on the knob, and glanced back not to ask for anything, not to explain. Just to look, to see her grandmother really see her for maybe the first time. Then she slipped into the night. Next day, Dot didn't recognize the number at first. The screen lit up as she trimmed basil in the casita's side garden, the morning light filtering through strands of her silver hair. She let it ring twice more before swiping. This is Dorothy Langston. A warm, practiced voice answered. Hi, Miss Langston. This is Miss Alvarez. I'm Sophie's school guidance counselor. Dot wiped her hands on her apron, frowning. Is something wrong? A pause. Then the woman's voice softened. Sophie's not herself lately. Quiet. Distracted. Her teachers say she's stopped participating in group work. She sits alone at lunch. It's not typical for her. Dot didn't respond right away. The wind rustled the rosemary behind her. Distant laughter from a neighbor's yard echoed faintly, foreign and far away. She's carrying something, Dot finally said. I won't explain it, but I will ask this. Be kind. Let her sit with it, but give her grace while she does. There was silence on the other end, and then a gentle, thank you, we will. When Dot hung up, she didn't go inside. She kept tending her herbs. The soil felt grounding between her fingers. That afternoon, Sophie didn't emerge from the main house. No filtered selfies, no patio dances, no choppy TikToks filmed with practiced disinterest. Her phone, usually an extension of her hand, lay untouched on the patio table like something abandoned mid-thought. Evan noticed first. He stood in the kitchen window, mug in hand, watching his daughter stare blankly at a textbook she wasn't reading. What's going on with her? He asked Lori. She's been weird ever since your mother started her power trip, Lori snapped, folding laundry with more force than necessary. She's manipulating her. She's not that. Calculating, Evan muttered. She's vindictive. Same thing. They didn't lower their voices. Dot heard every word through the open kitchen window as she passed on her way to the mailbox. She didn't flinch. She didn't pause. Just continued walking, her steps slow but steady. Miss Kent caught up with her at the corner. You've been quiet, Kent said. Sunglasses perched high, clipboard in hand. Sometimes, silence does the cutting for you, Dot replied. Kent smirked, then sobered. You should know Evan and Lori tried to dispute the citations, blamed the plumbing, then blamed you. Dot arched a brow. And? I showed them the audit footage, reminded them the investigation's still open. Their appeal was denied. Again. Dot nodded. Thank you. Kent paused, then looked toward the Langston house. The girl looks different, tired. She's waking up, Dot said. It hurts. When Dot returned to the casita, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Rhea. I've drafted the final revocation paperwork, Rhea said briskly. Water rights, access privileges, easement claims gone. Once you sign, they can't contest a thing. Dot exhaled, a mix of steel and sadness rolling through her chest. I'll sign it. Delivery's scheduled for tomorrow morning. Dot stared out at her garden. The drip lines, the gravel mulch, the tidy rows of lavender. Not one drop wasted. Not 1 inch overgrown. It was Hersand. It had always been enough. I never wanted it to come to this, she murmured. I know, Rhea replied. But they made sure it had to. Dot hung up, slid the phone onto the table, and sat quietly as the sun dipped below the treetops, casting long amber shadows across the gravel. Inside the main house, a door slammed. Evan's voice barked something unintelligible. No laughter followed. Dot didn't rise. She didn't need to. The pen moved slowly, deliberately, as if the ink itself understood the weight of what it marked. Dot signed the final page of the revocation documents while Ria watched, hands clasped neatly on the casita table. A thick manila envelope sat between them, filled with legal filings that would redraw the borders of her life and theirs. "It's done," Ria said quietly. Outside, the wind stirred the chimes on Dot's porch. A dry breeze pushed through the hedges, rustling the sun-scorched leaves that clung stubbornly to Evan and Laurie's rose bushes. No sprinklers had run in days. "They thought they inherited a kingdom," Dot said. "But they never asked who built the walls." Ria gave a grim little smile. "They'll ask now." By noon, the notice had been recorded with the county. Dot's legal standing was absolute. Utility access restricted, easement permissions revoked, representation with the HOA permanently stripped. To the city, Evan and Laurie were no longer homeowners. They were unauthorized occupant squatters with high-speed internet. At 2:15 p.m., a gray sedan pulled into the driveway. A woman in crisp navy slacks stepped out, holding a leather folder and wearing a realtor badge. "I'm here on behalf of Miss Langston," she told Evan, who met her at the porch in socks and a sweat-stained shirt. "We're preparing the home for sale." "You're kidding," his voice cracked. "She wouldn't." "She did," the realtor replied flatly. Laurie stormed outside seconds later. "This is harassment! We have rights!" The realtor simply handed her a folded copy of the revised title record. Laurie stared at the top line. Owner of record, Dorothy Langston, trustee. Inside the casita, Dot watched from her window. She didn't move. She didn't blink. Evan came down the path an hour later. No bluster this time, just a wounded sort of outrage, like he'd been wronged by gravity itself. "You're ruining your own family," he said, voice tight. Dot opened the screen door but didn't step out. Her eyes met his, calm and unshaken. "No," she said. "You ruined mine. I'm just cleaning up the debris." His mouth worked, searching for words that would land. None did. "Do you want me to grovel? To apologize?" "I want you to remember," she said. "The hose, the laughter, the silence after. That's what you built, Evan. Not this house." He didn't respond, just turned and walked back toward a home that no longer belonged to him. That evening, Laurie posted a furious rant to her private Instagram. Dot didn't need to see it. Ms. Kent had already forwarded screenshots. "Elder abuse!" the post cried. "Manipulation! Betrayal!" But the legal wall was solid. Attempts at litigation fizzled into dust beneath the weight of the signed deed and documented violations. By dusk, the realtor had scheduled initial showings for the following week. A photographer snapped images of the dry lawn and empty flower beds. A small, "coming soon" sign was staked near the mailbox. Dot lit a single candle on her porch and sat beside it, the twilight wrapping her in gentle lavender. A chorus of cicadas buzzed low in the brush. She felt no pride, only peace, like she'd finally swept out a room she had long ignored. Footsteps approached. She looked up to see Sophie, moving slower than usual, her phone nowhere in sight. "I found this in my desk," the girl said softly, holding out a small, folded piece of lined paper. "I wrote it last night." Dot took it, didn't open it. "I'm sorry," Sophie said. Dot studied her fastenot, the tears, but the restraint behind them, the quiet effort not to perform, not to beg. "Good," Dot said, and stepped aside so Sophie could pass. She didn't say more. She didn't have to. The real estate sign went up on a Tuesday morning white post, red letters crisp against the brittle grass. "For sale." Below it, a smaller sign swayed. "Viewings available." Evan stood on the porch in a hoodie and flip-flops, arms folded, watching the photographer snap shots of the stucco siding and patchy lawn. Laurie stayed inside, blinds drawn, pretending not to exist. Dot didn't watch from a window. She stood in her garden, trimming back the rosemary with a practiced hand, the scent rising in waves with every snip. By Wednesday afternoon, the listing hit the local MLS. Within 48 hours, 5 offers had come in, all above asking, all from families eager to move into a quiet, well-managed community. Jordan, the realtor, knocked gently on Dot's casita door. "We have a standout," she said, handing over a folder. "First-time buyers, local. She's a teacher, he's a contractor, and Jordan smiled. They're expecting. Dot's eyes lingered on the couple's letter. We're looking for our first home. Somewhere we can build a life. We respect the land. We want to be part of something lasting. She closed the folder. Accept it. No counter? Jordan asked. Dot shook her head. I've already gained what I needed. The next morning, a small U-Haul backed into the driveway. Evan loaded it in silence, his jaw clenched. Lori barked directions but barely touched a box. Sophie wasn't visible at all. Whether that was by choice or punishment, Dot didn't ask. They left without goodbye. A week later, Miss Kent invited Dot to a board meeting, not for a reprimand this time, but to review Dot's proposed reform for stricter irrigation, accountability, and resident education. After a brief discussion and one vote of dissent, the measure passed, effective immediately. Kent said with a satisfied nod. We'll publish your guidelines in next month's newsletter. I'd like to call it the Langston Amendment. Dot blinked. Let's not. Kent smiled. Fair enough. Later that afternoon, Dot walked into her credit union and wired $10,000 straight from the home sale proceeds to a nonprofit in Sacramento Water Equity for All. She didn't wait for a receipt. She knew the transfer would clear. That same evening, her doorbell rang. A young reporter from the Sun Valley Gazette stood nervously on the mat, holding a mic in one hand and a notepad in the other. Sorry to bother you, ma'am, she said. We've been following the case. The HOA reforms, the environmental citations, the ownership story. Do you mind if we ask a few questions? Dot considered her a moment, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. The reporter blinked. Really? Dot nodded. But only if you focus on what matters. They sat at the casita table, tea steaming between them. The reporter asked about the water usage fight, the HOA rulings, the neighborhood's shifting attitudes, and the sale, she added at the end. Was it hard, watching them move out? Dot sipped her tea, let the silence stretch. Then, number. Do you regret anything? Dot looked out the window, where the garden now bloomed with hardy, drought-tolerant herbstime, lavender, sage. A hummingbird hovered above the blossoms. She turned back to the young woman. Every dry day, she said, her voice steady, was worth it. The bank lobby was hushed, cool, and carpeted in beige. Dot's heels made no sound on the floor, but her signature echoed down the financial corridor louder than any protest Evan or Lori had ever raised. She signed her name Dorothy Langston on the final page of the trust documents. The ink had barely dried before the officer slid the folder across the table and said, Congratulations, the fund is officially active. Dot nodded once. Thank you. Make the first $20,000 dispersible this year, fall semester. The name etched on the scholarship would belong to someone else. Not her, not Evan, not Sophie. The Harold T. Langston Fund for Quiet Conservation. Harold had spent his final years tending their drip-irrigated garden, building solar shades over the porch, muttering about waste and heat and how no one respected the dam system anymore. It felt fitting. He hadn't needed applause to do the right thing. Neither did she. The scholarship application was simple. Female, identifying, under 25, pursuing environmental law or water resource management, with a preference for first-generation students. Essays were encouraged, but they didn't want stories about trauma. Dot wanted plans, blueprints, action. Within 2 weeks, the fund's inbox filled with letters, some handwritten, some typed in shaky grammar, some accompanied by infographics and passion-filled goals. Dot read every one at her kitchen table, a yellow highlighter in her hand, tears never far behind. One girl from Riverside wrote, I want to fight for reservoirs the way other people fight for air. Another, from a Central Valley migrant family, my grandma boiled dishwater to make it last 2 more days. That's who I'm doing this for. Dot smiled, folded them carefully, and made her selections. 3 grants were approved, quietly, without fanfare. She didn't want photo ops, just change. Meanwhile, across town, Lori posted a carousel of throwback vacation photos. Tahoe, Carmel, a long-gone Cancun trip. The captions were vague. Some memories are worth more than explanations. Comments were turned off. Evan emailed a long message. It began with, I've had time to think, and ended with, I hope you'll respond when you're ready. Dot clicked mark as unread, then archive. She wouldn't block him, But she wouldn't validate him either. Sophie had gone silent since the move. No TikToks, no group selfies, no thirst trap poolside posts. Her phone habits had shifted into something Dot couldn't monitor anymore, and strangely, didn't need to. Until a manila envelope arrived. It was hand-addressed, stamped from a college admissions office in Oregon. Dot opened it slowly, hands steady despite the pulse in her wrist. Inside was an essay, part of a personal statement. It was titled, "The Day We Humiliated My Grandma." Dot sat down on the edge of her bed and began to read. Sophie's handwriting wasn't on the page, but her voice was unmistakable. It wasn't a sob story. It wasn't a plea for pity. It was reflection measured, raw, and shockingly clear-eyed. We called it a joke. It wasn't. It was power, misused, and I knew the moment her hand slipped on the wet stone that we had made her small for sport. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She did something worse. She watched, and I've spent every day since realizing how much she gave and how little we ever gave back. Dot folded the pages slowly. Her throat tightened, but she didn't cry. The girl who had wielded the hose like a prop had clearly dropped it. Whether she'd picked up anything better yet, time would tell. Still, Dot didn't call, didn't text, didn't praise the honesty. Growth, after all, wasn't currency. Not in her house, not anymore. She slipped the essay into a drawer beside Harold's wedding band. Let it sit in the dark for now. Dot knelt in the dry soil with a hand spade, the metal cool in her palm and warmed by the afternoon sun. Her knees ached honest, familiar pain, but she welcomed it. The rosemary bush, already fragrant with potential, held steady as she packed earth around its base. To her left, basil. To her right, creeping thyme, already trailing like fingers reaching across mulch. Each plant had been chosen for a reason. Drought, resistant, hardy, no need for fuss or fanfare, much like herself. The casita yard, once patchy with crabgrass and shadows from the towering stucco walls of the main house, now bloomed in subtle color. Silver-green sage leaves fluttered like tiny flags. Marigolds winked beneath the window box, their petals defiant in the dust. Dot reached for her watering can metal, rusted around the handle, but Herson gave the herbs a light soak. Nothing wasteful, just enough. The plaque by her mailbox caught the morning light. Sustainable Yard of the Month. Miss Kent had delivered it personally, half smiling with an awkward shuffle of her clipboard. "I knew you'd turn this place into something grounded," she'd said. "Most people plant for curb appeal. You planted for legacy." Dot had only nodded. Compliments felt strange after years of invisibility, but she didn't reject them. She'd just let them land where they may. That afternoon, Rhea arrived with a bottle of wine and 2 mismatched glasses. "Didn't bring fancy," she said, waving the corkscrew like a wand. "Did bring gratitude." Dot chuckled. "You brought your time. That's more than most." They sat under the shaded pergola Harold had built with his own hands years ago. The wind lifted Rhea's silver curls and carried the scent of lemon balm through the air. "To clear lines and start again," Rhea toasted. Dot tapped her glass to Rhea's and took a slow sip. The wine was warm, earthy something, aged but not forgotten. Like her. "Sometimes," Dot said after a long pause, "we don't teach by giving. We teach by taking things away." Rhea nodded, her smile fading just slightly. "And sometimes, that's the only thing they remember." They sat in silence for a while, watching a hummingbird dart between lavender stalks. Later, as dusk cooled the sky to a dusty rose, Dot heard soft footsteps on gravel. She looked up to see the new owners of the main house walking through the gate, careful, almost shy. They held a dish wrapped in a checkered towel. Hi," the young woman said, smiling wide. "I hope this isn't weird, but we made banana bread. We just wanted to say thank you. The house has such a peaceful energy." Her husband nodded, his arm draped loosely over their infant daughter in a carrier. "We're keeping the garden minimalist. Your xeriscaping inspired us." Dot accepted the bread with both hands. It was warm. "I'm glad it found better caretakers," she said. The couple didn't ask what she meant. They just smiled and waved goodbye, walking back to the Hauser house. Once, now a space for new beginnings. She stood alone for a moment, her fingers grazing the towel, and felt the thrum of satisfaction low in her chest. Then footsteps again, smaller, uneven, not approaching directly, She turned. Sophie stood just outside the gate, clutching the bars lightly with both hands. She wasn't filming. She wasn't smiling. Her hoodie hung loose around her shoulders, and her face was blank but not empty. Not this time. She didn't call out. She didn't push the gate open. She waited. And Dot didn't move. Not yet. She didn't speak right away. Just stood there, the glass steady despite her fingers twitching. Her eyes were red but dry now, her hair pulled back. No phone in sight. I didn't want to just come in, Sophie said finally, voice low. I didn't want to assume. Dot held her gaze for a long moment. Then she wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the girl, each step deliberate. She took the glass with both hands, not as a gesture of thirst, but as something more sacred. She nodded, said nothing. They walked together to the bench near the herb bed-sweathered wood, flecked with old paint and rain memory. Dot sat. Sophie hesitated, then joined her, one cushion apart. The sun was dipping now, bleeding golden light across the terracotta planters. Bees floated lazily between lavender blooms. The wind carried rosemary and the faint scent of soil cool. Unthreatening. I know, sorry, doesn't fix, Sophie said. Her knees bounced, then stilled. But I needed you to know I think about it every time I see a hose. Every time someone laughs too hard at someone else's expense. Every time I open a faucet. Dot sipped from the glass. The water was room temperature clean. She let the silence sit thick before she replied. You were taught to take things lightly. Some lessons stick faster than others. I don't want to be like that anymore, Sophie said. She wasn't crying, but her voice wavered like a loose screen in the wind. I want to be someone who restores, someone who listens. Dot looked out over her garden, where thyme ran wild along the stone borders. Then start with yourself, she said simply. Plant where you stand. Mend what you break. Sophie nodded, slowly, like she was absorbing it bone deep, like she finally believed there was something beneath the reprimands worth recovering. They sat in silence, the way some families only dream of no noise, no apology loops, no forced absolution, just air and breath and time. A mourning dove called from the fence line. Somewhere behind them, a screen door creaked open and clicked shut. Life continued. Sophie didn't ask for forgiveness. Dot didn't offer it out loud. But both of them knew something irreversible had passed through discomfort, through stillness, through clarity. When the glass was nearly empty, Sophie stood up. I'll let you get back to your garden, she said softly. Dot stayed seated, her fingers brushing the rim of the glass. You didn't come for water, she murmured. You came to see if it could be offered. Sophie opened her mouth, closed it, then gave a single, small nod. She turned and left down the stone path, not rushing. No dramatic glances back, just the quiet retreat of someone who had begun the long walk back to herself. Dot watched her go. Then she set the glass gently beside her, wiped her palms on her apron again, and leaned back into the sunlight.